Think of at least one character you consider to be your favorite. For me, my answer would depend heavily on the series we're discussing. If I were to walk into a room to share my favorite Pokemon character, well, my answer would certainly raise a few eyebrows. They're not a character we battle, they don't hold any major importance to the mainline story from the player's perspective. In fact, this character is one of those rare cross-generational ones that, to my disappointment, practically vanished from the mainline series without a word. Watching my favorite character, whose story I felt had so much potential, simply get shuttered for several generations has me concerned for Legends EA. You see, this character plays a crucial role in a side quest in ZA's prequel, X and Y. Their disappearance highlights an issue that I've noticed affecting the franchise more and more as the generational count ticks continuously upwards. The answer to who is my favorite Pokemon character? Well, it's International Police Agent Looker. Looker didn't become my favorite character in isolation. Well, I suppose that's true for most characters. His design isn't particularly complex, fitting the bill of a classic detective motif. It also wasn't his tendency to crop up in the post-games of future generations. Looker is a character that had something truly special in X and Y, a dedicated, character-driven side quest. I like to believe I'm a patient person when it comes to franchises and the cast they populate their worlds with. Trust me, I'm a Star Fox fan.
Do a barrel roll!
The unique opportunity that I sense with Legends EA originates from this remarkable quest in X and Y. Emma, the quest tritagonist, is predominantly featured in ZA's marketing material, and by extension has me waiting with bated breath for an emotional reunion between Emma and Looker. Failure to follow up on this expectation would honestly leave me a little upset, but I wouldn't be surprised. While I would love to have another questline or even a main story to recall just as fondly as the one I'm about to recount, I know from experience that I shouldn't expect it. I feel like the Looker Detective Agency quest can be a guide to rectifying a major problem with the franchise, a tendency to abandon its characters. Far too many uniquely designed personalities with potential are simply left behind by the narrative. Little character time capsules unearthed for an extra battle or a free item, rather than to explore their story, their town, or the game at large. Left behind, waiting for a story that may never be told. I think a summary of the events that made this quest special is due. If you haven't experienced the story yourself and would like to, use this timestamp to skip to the next section. For those of you who are staying, this quest begins the moment you re-enter Lumiose City after becoming the Champion of Kalos. You'll receive a call on your holocaster by Looker requesting you specifically to join forces as his partner against crime in the city. While you are given the choice in classic Pokemon fashion, it's an illusionary one. You'll have to say yes to progress. This will trigger an extended fetch quest to hunt down Looker tickets around the city, though the logic behind it is to test your detective abilities. If fetch quests aren't your thing, bear with it as the actual story starts picking up in Chapter 2. Once you've officially become Looker's partner, your first case will involve a dip into the back alleys of Lumiose to check in on children who've been reported playing in the area. This is where you'll encounter Emma and her friend, an Esper named Mimi. Looker will question Emma on her choice of playground, but comes to realize that Emma is a homeless orphan before offering her and Mimi a home at the Looker Bureau, giving her a job as an assistant, and more importantly, taking on a guiding hand in Emma's development for the remainder of the quest. Looker, Emma, and Mimi start bonding, which is detailed in a private journal kept by Looker. He later openly admits his intentions to be the father that Emma doesn't have and took to teaching her reading, writing, and math, while also detailing his concerns to the player about Emma's personal stress levels, and privately concerns in his journal about the financial difficulties that lay ahead for the mission. Chapter 3 explores more of Emma's past through another case, where a tourist aggressively reports her Pokemon stolen, inconveniently in a different language of the player's system settings. Looker as a character has always had a tendency to be a mixture of goofy sincerity. Whether this is a part of his undercover act or his actual personality, we don't know. This personality trait led Looker to interpret the yelling as an aggressive request to acquire tea, rather than the actual report of a stolen Pokemon, which the player learns with the help of Mimi as an interpreter. This will lead you to a train station where you'll encounter the Lumiose gang, who you must defeat as Looker shares that he doesn't have a Pokemon of his own, which in past depictions we knew he had a Krogunk. With some snooping, we can find out that this specific Krogunk likely passed away sometime between Platinum and X and Y's events. Once you defeat the gang, you come to learn they're friends with Emma, a story explored more in depth in the manga. Looker offers the opportunity, if they swear against evil acts, to visit Emma at the Bureau anytime they wish. While the Lumiose gang uses the standard punk trainer classes, even the side characters are given a unique name and some backstory, even showing up again later. Emma expresses her concerns to Looker back at the Bureau during this chapter. She feels like a financial burden, only contributing through her studies instead of being the assistant Looker proclaims. Looker, for his part, tries to convince Emma that she shouldn't worry about that. Learning is her important work right now. Emma counters by mentioning that the Bureau never has clients, and the recent case, Looker turned down the offer of payment. Looker attempts to counter again, but Emma isn't entirely convinced, since if spoken to alone, she'll mention to Mimi about seeing signs for part-time work around the city. We later find out that Emma starts leaving the office more frequently without informing her guardian, who starts to worry enough to ask the player if they've seen her around, privately wondering if this is how a father feels. Chapter 4 is more action-packed in classic Pokemon fashion that involves setting up a trap to capture a crook who's been reported stealing multiple Pokemon while people are alone after defeating them in battle. This is where you'll meet Essentia, a robotic-looking character in a black and orange-colored suit. Essentia can be found disguised as 3 separate NPCs, who will lure you into battle and attempt to steal your Pokemon afterwards, before booking it once interrupted by Looker. As your backup, Looker will comment on Essentia's abilities to transform and superhuman athletic feats. It's the third encounter where you'll corner Essentia. Even while being threatened, Looker fires back warnings that he'll quite literally throw hands if needed, before being interrupted by Mimi. Mimi, who's typically fearful of strangers, attempts to embrace Essentia, before being attacked, with Looker taking the blow defending her. It's this interaction that convinces the detective that Essentia is Emma. He tries to reason with her before her suit glitches out and she escapes. In defeat, Looker requests the player to assist him back to the Bureau, downplaying an obvious injury. Under the guise of staying at the hospital, Looker privately mentions in his journal to be independently investigating the situation by attempting to contact Malva, and reveals that his actual mission is to track down and arrest Zurisic, who he suspects is behind the suit Emma wears. For Emma, she actually doesn't remember anything that transpired. After some time, you'll have a climactic confrontation with Essentia back in the Lysander labs, learning that Emma is simply a puppet while she slept inside the suit, unaware of her actions as Essentia. Once you defeat Essentia's gauntlet of 4 battles using the Pokemon you previously battled during her earlier encounters, the suit will malfunction with Emma waking up clueless to what actually happened. Looker will express deep concern for her well-being before stepping back to feign a reason for being outside of the hospital. Back at the office, he chats with Zurisic, interrogating him regarding his actions. While his mission was to arrest Zurisic, seeing that Emma has grown to like her part-time employer, Looker offers to have one last night of peace before he must reveal the truth behind his mission. In the final chapter, titled the same as this video's section, Looker simply has Mimi deliver a heartfelt letter explaining that he was undercover and actually employed by the International Police. Emma is baffled, expecting to see Looker again after hearing that he was granted permission to leave the hospital. This prompts Emma to pursue Looker so that they can at least speak instead of saying goodbye in a letter. The duo finds Looker and Zurisic at the Lysander Cafe, waiting for the train that'll take them away from Kalos to depart. Emma confronts Looker and in an intensely emotional moment, has to say goodbye. I'm not crying, you're crying. Man, this quest was a fantastic hidden gem tucked away in a rather disappointing postgame that was X and Y's. It's a story that actually developed Looker's character, turning him from passing detective you'd interact with on occasion to my personal favorite character. He gets a backstory and motivation that I'd love to see explored further. 12 years later, this quest shows the potential for storytelling within the Pokemon franchise. It's a story of an undercover agent that chose to recruit the champion of Kalos to assist in his investigation, only to turn unexpectedly into a family story with Emma, who gets involved with the very person Looker was tasked to take down. It felt fit for its own animated adaptation, which it got. Hey, for everyone who skipped ahead, welcome back. Don't mind the tears, you'll understand once you get around to playing that side quest. To continue where we left off, I had mentioned that this specific side quest, or well, a portion of it, received an animated adaptation, which is episode 17 of Pokémon Generations. Actually, brief tangent here, Generations feels like it wanted to be Looker's animated series because, in my opinion, he was a linchpin linking the various episodes together, because the stories all focused on the untold perspectives of canon events, either before, during, or shortly after your player passed through. It was a great, though awfully short series that actually developed some of the characters of the Pokémon world through a more serious lens, or showed the shadowy, darker side of the game's events. This series felt like even more proof that Looker was being built up from this odd detective from Platinum into this consistent, recurring figure. A figure with an emotionally substantive story, shown to have been involved in every region to date tackling the darker side of the Pokémon world. Today, Looker has vanished from the franchise without a trace, becoming another example of a larger issue hurting the video game's overall storytelling potential: character abandonment. Before I convey my thoughts on this issue, let me highlight what isn't character abandonment in my books. First, NPCs that are intended specifically to act as fillers, like various grunts, route trainers, and assorted randoms you'll chat with in towns, aren't being considered abandoned. Though sometimes these characters transcend the filler role with some development, like Grunt A and B from Sun and Moon, and the Lumiose gang from Kalos. The second example of characters that haven't been left behind are those whose story arcs come to a satisfying conclusion, even if their appearance is short. Many of our rivals and main antagonists fall into this category. While sometimes their stories continue to be developed in later games or depictions, I won't include them all the same. One clarifying note here is that some rivals don't have a satisfying conclusion, like Calum or Serena, though I'll opt to focus on other examples. Lastly, Looker is an example of a cross-generational character. While there are a number of characters that break out of their introductory regions, I don't consider characters that don't embark on international jaunts into other places to be abandoned. For a franchise as large as Pokemon, that would be an unreasonable expectation. Though the handful of characters that do make this journey usually act as cameos and little else. For me, there isn't anything wrong with being a curt nod to the previous generation. The issue here is that most of the characters that fit this category simply don't take the opportunity to develop their own story ever, even with a new setting. Especially egregious when their initial appearance was, well, underdeveloped. Alright, clarification done. In classic Rule of 3 fashion, I'll break up the characters I do consider abandoned into 3 categories. We'll call them checkpoints, stand-ins, and whiplash characters. You probably have a pretty spot-on idea on which characters fit neatly into this category. Checkpoints are those unique NPCs that primarily act as boss battles with little to no development beyond the purpose of checking your strength and moving you towards the next checkpoint. The best examples are the majority of gym leaders, and leader-adjacent characters in the case of Alola. Minor story elements aren't uncommon, like assigning jobs as themes. In some instances, gym leaders actually receive some development, like in Unova when they actively helped fight against Team Plasma, and further interactions with them 2 years later in Black and White 2. It might shock you, but I think some of the better examples of gym leaders actually being given character are in Scarlet and Violet. Those games experiment with a potential solution to the pervasiveness of checkpoint NPCs that I'll discuss more later. The definition you're likely thinking about with the term stand-in is when someone or something is substituted for another, like with a stunt double. For my purposes in this essay, I'll use the term to apply to NPCs that you'd think play a major supporting role, but in reality just don't. In other words, they're stand-ins for their potential as supporting cast members. These characters in particular tend to be the ones that upset me the most, even if they're treated better in the manga or anime. You see, unlike checkpoints, stand-ins feel... Actually, let me just show you. This is Athea and Concordia, who are the adoptive sisters of In. They appear in the opening cutscene of the game, and then only show up again at the climax of the story. Together, their combined dialogue count is about 2 paragraphs worth that focuses on sharing the backstory of In to the player. We're talking about characters with a unique name, models, and the potential for fulfilling relevance to the overarching plot that are treated like living journal entries in a free heal. Oh, and their depictions in Black and White 2 aren't any better, but at least they'll share a little of their story as well. To be fair, before writing this video, I wasn't as bothered by these characters largely because their general lack of presence isn't bothersome until you start thinking about it. We know these minor characters can stand on their own. An example from Black and White 2 is Yancy, who is a minor side character that can be missed entirely. You'll find their X-transceiver and interact via calls. They'll slowly grow more attached to the player with each call. While the conversations are short, they're numerous and share small tiny details about Yancy. They start blushing after a while, and you even go on a date in the Nimbasa Ferris wheel. How cool is that? So yeah, I get a little saddened when I see stand-ins being abandoned. I adore this franchise, and I want to adore the little tiny stories it can, but often doesn't weave. Whiplash hurts. While checkpoints are given a purpose and some prominence to the story, and stand-ins feel like they have potential that's never capitalized on within the games, Whiplash characters are easily spotted anytime you ask, "Who are you?" at the worst times. Thankfully, these characters are rare. Not thankfully, these characters are usually in the Elite Four. A Whiplash character will feel important, but have next to zero build-up or resolution to their storyline. They won't appear throughout the game, and unlike gym leaders, usually won't even be mentioned until after meeting them. Let's look at Alola's Elite Four. In the context of the game, we have a brand new Elite Four consisting of Hala, Hao's grandfather and first kahuna you'll face, Akala, the second kahuna, and also a familiar face. The third was supposed to be Nanu, but in Nanu fashion, he said no, leaving trial captain Acerola to fulfill the position, which plays well into Nanu's personality. Lastly, with the running theme of selecting familiar faces, we have Kahali. Wait, who? See what I mean by Whiplash? Kahali is a character who only appears for the first time during your challenge of the Elite Four in Alola. Sure, we can learn a little bit about her beforehand if we talk to the right NPC at the Hano Grand Resort. But outside of that, her whole gimmick is to be a returning island champion who's been traveling the world. This wouldn't be as big of a surprise if the other Elite Four members weren't familiar faces. A quick fix would have simply been to mention her throughout the story more openly. Instead, she gets to express her whole personality in a few lines of dialogue before challenging you. This category is often fit for the Elite Four. There are a handful of exceptions, like Flint from Generation 4, who you'll encounter just before your 8th gym badge, and Caitlyn, who is actually a cross-generational character, but fits into the cameo archetype. Then there's Malva, who's an active Team Flare member and reappears later in the Looker Detective Agency side quest. Credit where it's due, the franchise has gotten better at implementing these characters. Alola, Galar, Paldea, all include familiar faces we've at least encountered before their penultimate battle, leading up to the champion. Paldea especially features one of your teachers. Rika checks in on your progress, and Larry is just awesome. Larry deserves a pay raise. It's my preference to stay positive when discussing things that interest me. I like them after all, and if I didn't, I wouldn't talk about it. My grievances come from a place of admiration for my favorite franchise. So, I'd like to suggest some solutions to this abandonment issue for each character category. And what better place to start than with the solution hinted towards earlier? It's the gym test. If your first thought was, gym test? weren't those pretty basic? Correct. Their execution was definitely undercooked, but at least the potential for implementing a proper quest is there. Imagine that each gym leader came bundled with a unique quest that developed their character and overall story behind the city or town their gyms represent. Bear with me, but I feel like the idea of mixing in the request system from Legends Arceus with the addition of a larger, more complex quest like Lookers throughout the main story would do wonders for enhancing Pokemon's adventure RPG feel. It'd let the world breathe with more vibrancy than ever before. Here's another idea for checkpoints. Have less of them. I know, that sounds like blasphemy. Allow me to explain myself. I don't quite agree with the idea that a classic Pokemon RPG requires a player to compete against 8 strong trainers, fight back an antagonistic team, save the world, and become champion. Is that fun? Absolutely. But variety can be the spice of life. Shake it up a little. Why not have 4 gym leaders that we spend more time building connections with? Why don't we get the chance to hang out with characters? Why not let me step back from the main story to pursue another questline? Why not let us choose a different path than becoming champion? Sure, this would take some adjustment, and we've already been seeing elements of it in later games, like the Galar League, Gym Test, and soon real-time battles. Stand-ins were the ones that upset me the most when it came to making this video. Narrative principles aren't something I'm all too familiar with, but I do know the concept of Chekhov's gun. Do I agree with it entirely? No. The beauty of stories is the wide range of ways that they can be woven. Sometimes those stories are woven with intentional questions with no answers. One of my favorite parts of video games is when franchises offer bread trails for me to follow. Sometimes I get a reasonable conclusion to that trail, while other times the mystery is left open to interpretation. The solution I have for stand-ins feels blunt. Either we accept that these stand-ins with potential must fade into the background, being replaced with filler NPCs populating the virtual worlds, or they receive further development so they can proudly utilize their potential, even if that narrative purpose is intended to be open for interpretation. At last, for our Whiplash characters, just don't. Either remove them, introduce them earlier, or offer something of substance after our encounters with them. I entirely understand that there will always be examples of characters who simply won't have enough time. While the Elite Four tend to house these characters, many escape the Whiplash effect due to their novelty and strength as trainers. This is especially the case in the generations before 3D. The later generations have overcome this problem by introducing them earlier or being characters we've faced before in our adventure. Nessa, Larry, not you, Rika, Hala, and more managed to dodge that shocked, "Who are you?" Well, there's my assorted thoughts on character abandonment and a not so cleverly disguised way to talk about my personal favorite character in Pokemon. Got any thoughts on the topic? Just want to share your favorite character? The comments are open. If commenting isn't your thing, leaving this video with a like is really appreciated. Since you've watched to the end, video essays might interest you, so consider subscribing. My consistency has been something I've wanted to improve, but it's been a challenge. I've got something planned for Halloween though, so stay tuned. This video went live on Legends EA's release date. I'll be streaming it over on Twitch Thursday, Friday, and Sunday this week. I'm an amateur with streaming, but I've got a feeling you'll want to be there if Looker makes an appearance. My reaction might be clip-worthy. I also try streaming about once a week at the moment, so come hang out! Alright, enjoy your day, evening, or night. Till next time.